Welcome back to Deen Dharma. I'm your host, Shaima. We gather at the intersection of two vast oceans of wisdom. On the one side, we have the prostrations of the Islamic tradition, a path of surrender, of tawheed, of finding the one in the many. And then on the other side, we have the silent, seated meditation of the Buddhist Dharma, a path of awakening, of sunyata, of finding the empty space where the ego used to be. Today, we are diving into a territory that is both incredibly painful and profoundly liberating. There's a quote attributed to the Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky, and I've been reflecting on it lately. The quote goes, "Your worst sin is that you've destroyed and betrayed yourself for nothing." It's a heavy sentence, isn't it? It sits in your stomach like a rock. It speaks to that quiet internal rot that happens when we trade our soul's truth for empty validation. It's the nothing of social media likes, the nothing of keeping up with appearances in a community that doesn't know who we truly are, the nothing of chasing a version of success that leaves our inner self bare. In both our Islamic and Buddhist traditions, this self-betrayal is viewed as the ultimate human tragedy. But here's the nuance. It's a tragedy not because there's a vengeful God watching from a distance with a clipboard, marking us down for our failures. It's a tragedy because we're actively distancing ourselves from our own essence. We're building a wall inside our own house and then wondering why we feel homeless. The Quran reminds us of the self-inflicted veil in Surah Al-Hashr, chapter 59 of the Quran, titled The Exile, verse 19. God says, "And do not be like those who forgot Allah, so He made them forget themselves. It is they who are truly rebellious." Think about this phrasing, "He made them forget themselves." When we lose our connection to the source, to the map of our own hearts, it goes blank. We become strangers in our own skin. We begin to perform our lives rather than living them. In the Buddhist context, this is a state of avidya, ignorance, not a lack of information, but a fundamental misunderstanding of who and what we are. We mistake the mask for the face. We mistake the costume for the actor. And today we're going to explore this fragmentation. We explore the bridge back to the self that was never actually lost but merely obscured, and this bridge is built from the bricks of human radical acceptance. We dive into the deep waters of the Deen and the Dharma. Let's define our tool. What do we mean when we use the term radical acceptance? In modern psychology, specifically dialectical behavioral therapy, radical acceptance is the practice of acknowledging reality exactly as it is without trying to fight it, judge it, or run away from it. But we're taking it deeper today. We're looking at it as a spiritual posture. It's radical because it goes to the root. It isn't a superficial, it is what it is, shrugged over a shoulder. It's an internal yes to the facts of the present moment. I do want us to be clear about what it's not. It's not approval. You can accept that you're in pain without liking the pain. It's not passivity. You can accept that the situation is unjust while simultaneously working to change it. And it's not being a doormat. Radical acceptance is simply the end of the internal protest. Think about how much energy we spend every day arguing with reality. We sit in traffic and think, this shouldn't be happening. We experience a heartbreak and think this isn't fair. We look in the mirror and think I should look different. Every should is a leak in your own energy tank. When we say this shouldn't be happening, we're leaking spiritual energy into a war we cannot win. Why? Because it's already happening. To argue with what is like trying to argue with the rain while you're standing in a downpour. You can scream to the clouds all you want, but you're still getting wet. Radical acceptance is the moment we stop saying no to the present moment so that we have the clarity and the energy to say yes to the next step. In the Islamic tradition, this is a seed of rida, contentment with the divine decree. It's the realization in the moment that your life has been authored by Al-Hakim, the All-Wise. To fight the moment is to fight the author. And in the Buddhist tradition, this is the cessation of tanha, craving or thirst. We suffer because we want the moment to be something other than it is. We want the pleasant to stay forever and the unpleasant to vanish instantly. Radical acceptance is the courageous act of dropping the shield and the sword. And imagine you've been at battle for 20 years. Your arms are tired, your armor's heavy. Radical acceptance is the moment you drop all your gear. Only when the hands are empty of weapons can they be open to receive the divine. And only when the mind stops fighting the isness, it's able to see the suchness of God. Let's move into the heart of the Islamic perspective. We start with the concept of Fitra. If you were to strip away your name, your nationality, your job, your traumas, and even your specific memories, what would be left? The Quranic answer is your Fitra. It's often translated as your innate nature or the primordial disposition. Fitra is the blueprint of the soul. It's the internal compass that points towards the divine before the world tells us who we should be. And there's a beautiful hadith where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that every child is born upon the Fitra. And it's the environment, their parents, their society that shapes them into different religious or cultural identities. Fitra is the state of intrinsic goodness and God consciousness. It's the echo of the covenant of Alast. In Islamic metaphysics, there's a belief that before the physical world was ever created, all of our human souls were gathered and asked by the Creator, "Am I not your Lord?" And we all replied, "Bela, yes, we bear witness." And that yes, it's encoded in your spiritual DNA. Radical acceptance in an Islamic sense is the act of returning to that yes. It's the realization that you're not a project to be fixed, but a creation to be remembered. So we betray ourselves when we bury this fitra under layers of social conditioning, ego, and the nothing that Dostoevsky spoke of. We spend our lives trying to build a personality that's acceptable to the world, but in doing so, we become unacceptable to our own souls. We become like the person who owns a beautiful diamond but covers it in mud because they're afraid people are going to try to steal it. And eventually they forget that the diamond is even there. They start to believe that they're the mud. They spend all their time polishing the mud, trying to make the mud look pretty, when all they ever had to do was wash it away. There's a profound Sufi teaching, a story about a young prince that was kidnapped as an infant and raised in a distant land where no one knew his lineage. He lived in poverty, constantly feeling a sense of wrongness, a sense that he didn't belong. He spent his life trying to hoard scraps of gold, trying to build a small rickety throne in his hut so that he could feel high and important. And decades later, a traveler from his father's kingdom found him. The traveler laughed when he saw the rickety throne. He said, "Why are you building a chair of scraps? Your father is the king of the 7 seas. The entire kingdom is already yours by your right of birth. You're starving while sitting at a banquet." And that's the human condition. We are the prince. Our thrones of scraps is our ego, our titles, our vanity, our desperate need to be right. We betray our fitra with these scraps. So radical acceptance in Islam is an act of taslim, submission. Now, in the West, submission often has a negative connotation. It's a defeated soldier surrendering to a tyrant, but in a spiritual sense, taslim is the surrender of a lover to the beloved. It's the surrender of the wave to the ocean. It's not a groveling submission, but an acceptance that the fitra within you is already perfect. You don't need to become something holy. You need to unbecome everything that isn't you. And you need to accept that you are already loved, already seen, and already sufficient in the eyes of the One. As the Quran says in Surah Ar-Rum, chapter 30 of the Quran, titled Rome, verse 30, "So set your face towards the religion as a hanif, purely natural. Adhere to the fitrah of Allah upon which He has created all people. No change let there be in the creation of Allah." That no change part is vital. It means your essential holiness cannot be destroyed. It can only be hidden. and radical acceptance is the process of uncovering it. Now let's travel to the silence of the Zen hall. Here we find a different vocabulary for a similar liberation: Nirvana. For many in the West, Nirvana is actually misunderstood as a place, a kind of Buddhist heaven that you go to after you die. But the masters actually tell us something different. In the words of the late great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, Nirvana is not a location, it's a state of cooling. The word literally means to extinguish, to blow out, like a candle flame. So what are we blowing out? Not our existence, not our joy. We're blowing out the three fires. 1, greed, that desperate I must have. 2, hatred, the desperate I must get rid of. And 3, delusion, the belief that I'm a separate, permanent I, disconnected from the rest of the universe. Nirvana then is the extinction of these ideas, of birth and death, of coming and going, of self and other. It's the ultimate radical acceptance because it accepts the voidness of the ego. The Buddha taught us that we're all living in a burning house. The fire of our desires and our resistances are actually burning us. We spend our lives trying to rearrange the furniture in a burning house, thinking, if I just move this sofa to the other side of the room, I'll be happy. And radical acceptance is the realization that the house is on fire and the furniture actually doesn't matter. And the remedy isn't to fix the house, babes. It's to step out of the fire. So how do we do that? How do we step out? By stopping the struggle. Thich Nhat Hanh often used the beautiful metaphor of the water and the wave. Now, imagine a wave on the surface of the ocean. The wave has a beginning and an end. It has a height. It could be a successful high wave or a failed low wave. The wave might look at other waves actually and feel jealous. Like, look how big that wave is. I'm so small and insignificant. And the wave is terrified of the moment it hits the shore and it dies. This is us when we live in the self-betrayal Dostoevsky mentioned. We're waves obsessed with our waveness. But through radical acceptance, through the deep insight of the Dharma, the wave looks down into its own depths and it realizes, wait, I'm water. When the wave realizes it's water, it doesn't stop being a wave. It still rises and falls, but the fear is gone. If it's high, it's water. If it's low, it's water. When it dies on the shore, it's still water. Nirvana is the wave's realization that it's the ocean. It doesn't need to become water. It just needs to stop its frantic struggle to be a separate, permanent wave. Radical acceptance in Buddhism is the recognition of suchness. It's looking at a flower and seeing it exactly as it is, without wanting to be plastic so it lasts forever, and without being sad that it's going to wilt tomorrow. It is being with the wilting as much as it is the blooming. Thich Nhat Hanh once said, to be beautiful means to be yourself. You don't need to be accepted by others, you need to accept yourself. So when we stop fighting the suchness of the moment, even if that moment contains sadness or aging or uncertainty, the fire of suffering goes out. That coolness, that aha moment of release, that's Nirvana. So how do these two meet? If Fitra is our original face and Nirvana is the extinction of a false face, they meet at the crossroads of the great release. At first glance, Islam and Buddhism seem opposite. One is centered in the absolute one, Allah, and the other is centered on the great empty, Sunyata. But if you go deep enough into the mystical traditions, into the heart of the Sufi and the heart of the Zen monk, the vocabulary begins to blur. In the Islamic tradition, we have Tawheed, which is oneness. It's the declaration that there's no reality but the divine reality. And in Buddhism, we have Sunyata, which could be translated as emptiness or interconnectedness, but it's the declaration that there's no thing as a separate, independent self, because everything is part of everything else. The bridge here is when you realize there's no God but God, La ilaha illallah, you're essentially saying to your small ego-driven I, it doesn't exist as a separate entity. If God is the real al-haq, then my ego's claim to be separate and independent reality is a lie. And radical acceptance is the tool used to dismantle that lie. The great Sufi master Bayazid Bastami once asked, "How do you reach this state of peace?" He replied, "I shed myself as a snake sheds its skin. Then I looked at my essence and behold, I was he. And this isn't hearsay, it's ultimate radical acceptance. It's the realization that the self you've been betraying, the self you've been destroying for nothing was an illusion anyways. It was just a collection of stories, fears, and memories and social expectations. When the I is silenced, what actually remains? The Buddhist would say Nirvana, and the Muslim would say the Fitra, reflecting the divine. They're describing the same room with two different windows. It's the room of peace. And in the Quran, this is the peace mentioned in Surat Yasin, which is the chapter known as the heart of the book. In verse 58, God says, "Peace, a word from the compassionate Lord." It is a peace that doesn't depend on your circumstances. It's the peace of a wave that finally knows it's an ocean. Masters of these traditions didn't just talk about these concepts in old books. They actually lived the yes in the face of absolute chaos. Let's look at Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, often called a Sheikh al-Akbar, the greatest master. He taught that the heart is a mirror, and if a mirror is covered in the dust of judgment and resistance, it can't reflect anything. But if you practice radical acceptance, the mirror becomes clear. And he famously wrote, quote, "My heart has become capable of every form. It is a pasture for the gazelles, and a covenant for the Christian monks, and a temple for idols, and pilgrims' Kaaba, and the tables of the Torah and the book of the Quran." And this is radical acceptance taken to its cosmic limit. Ibn Arabi isn't saying all religions are the same on a legal level. He's just saying that his heart has stopped saying no to the various ways the divine manifests in the world. He allowed his heart to be the mirror for the divine in all its colors without judging the glass. So when you stop judging your own internal weather, your anger, your sadness, your joy, you become capable of every form. You become a vessel rather than a fortress. Consider the life of Thich Nhat Hanh, who during the Vietnam War, his country was being torn apart, his friends were being killed, and he was eventually exiled. If anyone had the right to say this shouldn't be happening, it was him. But he practiced what was called engaged Buddhism. It's rooted in radical acceptance. He didn't choose a side in hatred. He accepted the reality of suffering on either side. He saw that the soldier dropping the bomb and the villager dying were both waves caught in a storm of delusion. And he taught that the wave does not need to die to become water. It's already water. Even in the midst of war, he maintained a yes to the present moment, which actually gave him the clarity to organize relief efforts, rebuild villages, and eventually influence the global peace movement. Whether it's the Sufis' rida, contentment with God's decree, or the Buddhists' upekkha, equanimity, the message is the same: stop the war. Rida is the state where you say, "Oh Allah, if you're pleased with this moment, then I am pleased with it." It's the acceptance of the beloved's will. And upekkha is the state when you stand in the middle of the 8 worldly winds: praise and blame, success and failure, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, and you remain unshaken. These aren't states of cold indifference. They're actually states of radical, warm presence. And they're the result of finally stopping the betrayal of the self. We've traveled through the philosophy and the history. Now let's move away from theory to practice and transform this into an experience. I want you, wherever you are, whether you're driving, walking, or just sitting in a quiet room, if it's safe to do so, I invite you to bring your awareness into this moment. I want you to inhale deeply through your nose, feel the air filling your lungs. In the Islamic tradition, this is Nafs ar-Rahman, the breath of the most compassionate. Every breath is a fresh gift, a renewal of your existence. And exhale slowly. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, breathing in, I calm body and mind. Breathing out, I smile. Feel the suchness of your breath. It doesn't need to be deep to be perfect. It just needs to be felt. Scan your life right now. Scan your body. Where are you holding a no? Is there a tension in your shoulders, a knot in your stomach? Is it a thought about a mistake you made yesterday, or a fear about tomorrow? Where are you saying, this shouldn't be? Where are you betraying your fitra, your original peaceful nature, to please a world that doesn't even see you? Locate that resistance. Don't try to change it yet. Just look at it. Imagine that situation, that pain or imperfection. Instead of pushing it away or trying to fix it so you can finally be happy, I actually want you to invite it to tea. Mentally say to your pain, welcome, I see you. You are a guest of the divine. In the Islamic tradition, we say, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Truly, we belong to Allah, and to Him we return. And this applies to our feelings too. Your sadness, it belongs to the divine. Your anxiety, it belongs to the divine. Give them permission to be here. Feel the relief of stopping the fight. Now visualize your boundaries softening. You're not a solid, lonely self fighting a solid external problem. You're a wave in the ocean of Tawheed, oneness. The ocean is vast, deep, and silent. On the surface, the wave is moving, even if it's choppy and messy, but it's always water. You are the water. Now, for the next 10 seconds, I'm going to be silent. And in the silence, I want you to drop all concepts. No Muslim, no Buddhist, no success, no failure, no good or bad. Just the Fitra breathing, and just the Nirvana in the present moment. Fyodor Dostoevsky warned us not to betray ourselves for nothing. The nothing is the resistance. It's the ego's desperate attempt to rewrite a reality that's already written by the most compassionate. It's the wave trying to be something other than water. When you practice radical acceptance, you're not giving up, you're just waking up. You're reclaiming the Fitra that was never actually lost, and entering the Nirvana that was always right here, vibrating under the noise of your thoughts. The path is simple, but it isn't easy. Stop betraying your soul for the nothing of the world, accept the suchness of your life, and trust that the ocean knows exactly what it's doing with the waves. I want you to go forth today and be the observer rather than the judge. Thank you for joining Deen Dharma. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you.